Thanks for taking time this Friday morning to chat along with us. The session today is going to be a very quick fire run through simple ideas. It's designed for folk who really haven't done a lot of fundraising. So apologies if you're an expert, you will probably be the most expert person in the room. And I really hope I can rely on you to share some of your experience later on in the discussion. What I'm going to do is kick off. I'm not an expert at this Zoom caper, so I do tend to leave that to my colleagues. So I'm just going to try and get myself sorted with the presentation. Give me a wee second. So share from the beginning. And Laurie, if you could keep me right and let me know if it's actually working at your end for me.
Yeah, I can see the PowerPoint at the moment as the program, if you want to click through.
Isn't that us now?
Yeah, that looks great. Good to go.
Super. So yes, this is all about the Big Lunch as a fundraiser, and I'm sure some of you will have already seen in our social media that we're very much focused on people taking part in the Big Lunch this year in June. The reason we're not going heavy-handed on you taking part just on the 5th and 6th is because we know across the UK people will come out of lockdown restrictions at different stages, and let's hope, fingers crossed, not go back into them, but it is still a possibility. So what we're saying is take part this year, because the Big Lunch is the UK's annual big date to celebrate, and we want to give thanks to our neighbours in our community, and we really want to celebrate the community connections that have made a massive difference, you know, over the last year, but also help people get to know each other better, because we know that the people who have been Big Lunchers for a while or have been involved in their community for a while really did have the infrastructure set up to help each other when things went wrong, and that's what we want to encourage for everyone. So anyway, this year we feel that there's a lot more reasons to get together, and we've made it as easy as possible. So what we're saying is take part, whether it's a large event you plan or something smaller. We're here to help you, and we have some COVID safe regulations on our website that we'll share after the call as well. But we also are interested in hearing from individuals, because we know that every area is different. So if as you go through this session, you think to yourself, some of these are not pertinent to where I am, the session's designed really that you could take some of these ideas and use them in a year. So they'll not all be about the current, you know, they'll not all suit you currently. So as I said, they're just a little bit about the Big Lunch, and as I said, there's more reasons than ever to get together. But what we wanted to do today was let people who maybe haven't taken part in the Big Lunch before see some of the ways that other people have fundraised. And you know, even if your Big Lunch, and all of them are about connecting with each other and having fun and getting to know each other better, there's no harm to make a wee bit of money along the way too. And over the course of the last few years, there's an average of about £8 million raised each year across the whole of the UK, with people taking part in the Big Lunch, and some people do it on a regular basis, monthly. So, you know, take the idea and see what you can do with it yourself. We're always keen to hear of people's new ideas and the way in which they've made it work in their neighbourhood. This year, as I say, it's a month of community activity, and the Big Lunch is linking up with all of these charities. So you could do the Big Lunch to say cheers to your volunteers. You might want to recognise a carer who's very kind in your community, or a whole load of caring volunteers. We have all of these different organisations teamed up and connecting in and making use of the Big Lunch as a way to recognise and support their own ideas, and we hope you will too. I've kind of gone through some of this, but we're kick-starting on the 4th of June and moving through to the 4th of July, which this year will be Thank You Day, part of the Together campaign, and the Big Lunch will feature as part of that. So as I say, if things don't go right for you at the beginning of June, feel free to change the date and make it work where you live. And in fact, we've had a few calls from people telling us they're planning things later on in the year too, and that's fine as well. As I said, you know, we've come out of lockdown in different stages, so please do consider your COVID regulations in relation to what you're doing to fundraise. And as I said, some of these suggestions are not going to work for you necessarily right now. Just a little bit about kind of some of the fundraising that we've done. So like 29% of Big Lunch events have over the course of time included at least one fundraiser. So that's information from 2019. obviously the situation was different in 2020 because we were right in the heart of the lockdown. So we thought it was more useful for you to see some of these. It also says like kind of the majority of people fundraise for a local charity. There's a whole range of numbers in terms of how much people fundraise, but most people tend to do smaller events, and so their fundraising is smaller, but it's designed in that way because they have a smaller ambition. It might be to achieve something like purchasing a park bench or plants for their community garden, things like that. But other people have gone on and fundraised £6,000 and £7,000 through massive events in larger scale spaces. And it is a possibility again in the future. Whether that would be something for you to do in June or not, I really don't know. It would depend on your area and how your organising committee feels about something as large scale as that. But it could be possible, and we just need to keep an eye on our restrictions and work very closely with those. And we'll provide this PowerPoint afterwards as well, so don't worry about scribbling notes or anything like that. It'll be saved as a PDF and sent out to you along with some of the links. So kind of running through, I'm going to just share some of the images that we've taken from different regions of the UK to really emphasise to you that, everyone across the UK does the big lunch, some of us in different ways, and some of us you'll see very similarly. Obviously, the big lunch really brings you back to food, and food is a great way to fundraise. And kind of the traditional way we would have always raised money was through bake sales and things like that, and that is still possible. We've looked at some of the COVID regulations, and we'll be providing you with some of the food safety links that are useful for you to bear in mind. And perhaps this year more than ever, it's useful for you to really publicise, that you have followed some of those restrictions, because we take it for granted in a normal year, but in a year like the one we're in, I think it's really useful to, as part of your fundraising endeavours, let people see the extra care you've gone to, and remind them, that things are safe, because I feel like we all, as friendly, helpful people, have a role to play in encouraging those who are maybe a wee bit more nervous back out into community, and there's little things we can do to help people feel a little bit more secure. So yeah, this is little buns that I think one of my colleagues in Edinburgh made and had at her big lunch, and she thought to herself it would be a lovely way to fundraise too. Another thing you can do is ask for donations for food. So it may be that people turn up to your big lunch and you've said bring your picnic or bring your food. A way to fundraise can be to have things ready to gift out to and ask for donations, or even sell them. One of the things to bear in mind is if you're having a big lunch on a street or in a space that's regulated by your government or council, it's really important for you to touch base with them to check the rules around charging for things, and also around having things like bouncy castles on those grounds, because there will be regulations around that, and they'll be different according to where you live, which is why I'm suggesting you speak to the council. But we also have regional representatives for the big lunch across the UK, and if you're in an area and you want to speak to one of them, again, you can ask for that information and we'll get that sent out to you post-event today. And this is just a link which I'll provide to you, which I think is really useful reminder for anybody. It's just a simple 4 C's and reminding people to be careful about their hygiene when they're cooking and providing food. This is Bister, and one of the things that we find is that groups and communities are really keen to do a big lunch, and when you sit down to have the conversation, everybody has different ideas and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and sometimes what you had planned to be a very simple event can become really quite intricate, for want of a better word. And what I was thinking was just ways that you could fundraise in advance, so that you have, if you want to provide the food given the year we've had, or you might want to honour somebody that's been brilliant in your community, whatever it is you're wanting to do and you want to fundraise for, sometimes you might just need the money to provide the big lunch rather than it providing money afterwards. And one of the ways to do that is by having an auction in advance. So silent auctions are a great way to fundraise if you have a small target and you want to reach to provide, say, food for everyone, or as I said, like entertainment and things like that. And it's really easy to organise one of these. The hardest bit really is getting the people to give the decent auction bids, and you can do that by, I would advise, having somebody who's really good fun in charge of the encouragement and trying to motivate people to gift the money, and also having somebody else separately in charge of gathering in the items for auction. And that doesn't need to cost very much at all, because you'll find that even with the year that we've had, local businesses will always be keen to do something in return for some recognition, or maybe a little bit of free promotion. Also, you'll find that people will have things in their house that are great, but they just don't need anymore. And that's good enough with an auction like this. Sometimes it will be jewellery, sometimes it will be a gift set, things like that. It doesn't need to be a massive thing. You can have lots of different gifts and the money all adds up. And another thing you can consider then too is on your big lunch day, having an actual auction. And as I said, have somebody who's really good fun in charge of that, so that it's not dry and they really engage the audience and motivate people. And you might want to break that up, because sometimes if you have an auction and it goes on for a long time, it's quite dull for everyone, especially if people don't have a lot of cash. And that's one of the things we need to consider this year, is just kind of the way in which we fundraise, whether it's too much, and we only know that from our own neighbourhoods really, and how people feel. And it's a conversation to have as part of your planning, how you want to welcome everybody and help everybody feel included. But yeah, I think auctions can be great fun, and certainly I've been at a few big lunches, and as they say in Northern Ireland, the crack has been mighty during the auction, because it gets heated if it's something. So for instance, I think it was a Gaelic football shirt that had some signature on it, and it became very popular, and there were two people certainly going at it to make sure that they brought it home. And so it made probably more money than anything else in the auction put together. So again, another idea. Raffles kind of speak for themselves. I'm sure we've all been involved in or contributed in some way to a raffle in the past. But again, it doesn't need to be a brand new prize. It could be money that you're raffling. It could be something that's useful for the people, that relevant to the people that you're working with. But this one is in Newquay, and I think it was really lovely because it was a small community garden, and there was a lady, Peggy, who had lived across the road for years and been kind, and she had died, so they wanted to fundraise for a pear tree. And yeah, Lisa, one of my colleagues, said that they raised £60 in about 30 minutes. And that's Peggy's daughter saying thanks, and it's lovely for her, I think, when she passes her mum's old house, to see that pear tree now too. So it's little things like that. And this one's from Neath in Wales, and both my Welsh colleagues, Sam and Laurie, love this idea. So I'm sure some of you, I know in Northern Ireland we do corporate kilometres at school to fundraise for different charities, but I've never seen it before done on the street. And I think this is a great one from a point of view of social distancing, because I think the way in which it's done is that the opposite sides of the street compete against each other to see whose line gets longest, or perhaps gets finished first, or whatever it might be. And they are only allowed to use 1p, 2p and 5p coins. So I'm sure they're saving for a while to get all those. But it's a great fundraiser, and generally raises over like 150 to 200 pounds. And when the weather's bad, when the weather's bad, it can go indoors as well if you have a local community hall or something like that, or if you're maybe working with older people and you want them to be included in it and it's too hard for them to be bending down. Again, I think they ran out of tables at this one. They had to get more tables for the money. So yeah, it's a simple idea, but I love that. I could see how that could work at any big lunch. This one again is from Wales, and it's one that sits on the pub counter, I think at Laurie's local pub. And this one was kind of a simple one, which was put your money on the lemon and see if you can get it to balance. And literally you don't even need to have a prize for that, because if it balances, you get the pride of that you managed to achieve it. But I think quite a few 20p's get spent in there trying to make that work. And again, that all adds up over time. And you could do that, have that set up in advance now that the pubs are open again. You could do that way, or you could have that sitting at the event, or have it in a smaller way on a number of the tables. So just a simple little thing to try, and it all adds up. I love this one. So this one was done for breast cancer, to raise money for a local breast cancer charity. But what they've this is not the actual one because I didn't have a photograph, but I remember it happening, so I've taken this off the internet. But what the idea of this is that you charge for the balls, you throw the balls, and you try and get them into the bra. And if you get them into the bra, you get a little present, and it could just be as simple as a sweet. You know, it doesn't even need to be a big present, but it's the crack that you have doing it. So yeah, that one I love. Teddy bears. So when I asked my colleagues about fundraisers that they remembered and loved, there were quite a few folk came back with teddy bears picnics. And this is just a range of teddy bears picnics that have happened in the last wee while. And of course, as some of you will know, the Gruffalo was featured in the big lunch in the past too. So ways in which to fundraise, and it might seem crazy, is you could charge the teddy bears in and not the children, you know, so they have like little extras, or have things set up like lunches ready for the teddy bear, and prizes or competitions that they can enter for their teddy bear. They could have a teddy bear catwalk, they can do what they like. So you can get really crazy with the teddy bears. And this was one that actually worked virtually last year too, that people could take part and have a teddy bears picnic in their garden, and you can fundraise by having a teddy bear lunch sent around and then just charging for that if you wanted to. And there's lots of different ways to do it. You could even run a little, you know, art competition or a teddy bear quiz, and have small amounts of money that's, you know, geared towards people taking part, because children are really a good way to fundraise, because it's, parents are always looking for ways to entertain them, I'll say politely. Green thinking, obviously with Eden Project, we always try to be environmentally friendly. And in the last year, when people have been growing and sharing seeds and things like that, that has really exploded, and it's been blooming marvelous, I think. But actually, it's a good fundraiser too. So we always encourage people to swap their seeds and things like that. But actually, you know, if you're thinking ahead, this could be one for next year as well. You will all have plants in your gardens, and some people will admire some of them. So why not gather in some of those seeds and package them up and have them ready to sell? You can also have plant swaps, and you know, you could have it that if someone doesn't have one to swap, they can make a donation, or you can charge for that. And again, maybe having that off street so that you don't have to pay for a license or things like that can really work. But you can certainly advertise it on your street and have a date and a time and let people know about it, and really use your social media to motivate interest, because there are so many local gardening groups and things like that, and people are always looking for plants that are not too expensive, because they really have gone up in price. So yeah, it's something to think about. And this one was our colleague Lindsay's plant swap big lunch in Loswithiel. That was a bit of a tongue twister. So I'm sorry, but I am a lover of the sponge. I love it, and I can't get enough of it. And you would empty my pockets in a heartbeat if I saw you offering sponge. What is it called? Yeah, like to throw the sponge. And we have obviously really good ways. People get very inventive, and there's always somebody artistic in your group or that you know. So you can actually create those stands like you get at the beach and get people to put their heads in. But I think children particularly love it when you strap a daddy or a mummy to the chair and you hand them those sponges. You can make quite a lot of money in a very short space of time. But with these as well, there is the old health and safety requirements too. So you need to be kind to the people as well and let them know what they're in for, because those sponges can weigh quite a bit. Speaking from experience, and my boys were not at all slow about making sure they had a good aim. So yeah, great way to make money, lots of fun as well. And that's one of the things really we're trying to do with this, is keep the fundraising ideas fun so that they don't feel like they're too much of a drag for people. And because there has been a lot asked of us in terms of fundraising and donations over the course of the pandemic, for very good reason. So we want to make it feel like it's not painful for folk when they're at your big lunch weekend. I love this wee idea because, you know, bringing a chair can be a bit laboursome. But actually, if you have some lovely decorated chairs and you set them out and let people make use of them, and you put just the price on them, you know, you could quite easily get rid of half of your tidying up but also have some fun as a group in prepping them. And that's one of the things that we want to really encourage too, because the big lunch is all about getting together. So we always say that half the fun of the big lunch is in the preparation, and this will be a good way to get involved in preparation beforehand, and then make money out of it afterwards as well. That goes the same for crafting, you know, upcycle and decoupage, because you could upcycle jam jars, and you could have those in the middle as little, you know, little wildflower, not wildflower, but, you know, like little flower, garden flower decorations, and just have a little price tag on them and ask people to make a donation and take it home. And yeah, that's another idea. Again, this is really just simple, but people love to have something to take away as a wee memory from the day. So these are just bottle tops, and I don't know if you have a scrap store near you, but in the play resources in Belfast, there are always tons of these available. And yeah, if you know somebody who likes a beer, I'll not mention any brands, but you can see there that they're bottled beers, beer tops and things like that. They're really handy, and you can just get a little hole put in them and make them into like a little gift that people could wear, or you could stick a cheap brooch back on it and make it into a little brooch. And children would love to sell those around the event. And you could have your street name or whatever it is you're fundraising for just printed out on a laser printer and stuck in there with glue. Very, very simple, and the money would all add up. Face painting. So yes, you can make lots of money by having a face painter, but you also might need to pay for them. One of the things, if your group does a lot of different events, one of the things I always recommend here is that you pay for the face paints or raise money for the face paints, and then you get your teenagers to do the face painting because they absolutely love it. And there are lots of adults like myself who love it too. So, you know, it depends. Obviously, it's not going to be the standard that a professional face painter offers, and they provide a fabulous service. So if you decide that's what you want, that is a great way to fundraise. But you might also just want your teenagers to get a bit crazy and to pay for the privilege of using the face paints. And you'll find that you'll make quite a bit of money that way too. And that's my own little niece there with one of my own works of art. And that's Waterfoot, where I live in the Glens of Antrim. Another thing that we do, the big lunch works very well, but this would work particularly well this year if you want to do something on a smaller scale. So come down with me. It could be a larger event that they charge people into, again, considering your restrictions and making sure that you fall within, you know, what's safe where you live. But it might also be that you organise through your WhatsApp group or whatever way, or through invites through the letterbox, that people who want to take part can sign their house up to be part of a Come Down With Me. And you can run that over a period of weeks through the month of June. It's really good because you can fundraise for a cause with that over a period of time. You might even want to run it through the year, and different houses come up with different themes, and the organisation is literally in how many people want to take part and teaming people up. Sometimes people prefer to team themselves up, and you can either have it that they make donations online in advance before they take part, or they go to the house and give the host with the most the donation before they come in, as they come in the door. Again, that would need to work with COVID regulations, so it might need to be outside in a garden at the moment, depending on where you live. But we are talking about June, and the regulations are changing, and I think this is a nice way to include the whole street if you're concerned about having a big lunch and leaving people out. One of the things as well is that, you know, using food and considering big lunch activity. My colleague in Glasgow was saying that a refugee charity is planning to invite neighbours to have lunch and have like gatherings in the neighbourhood to fundraise for their charity. And it's also a really good way because it encourages and enables a refugee, gives a sense of permission around feeling part of their community and reducing the isolation that a lot of them have been feeling this year. Also, a veterans charity is using the big lunch as a way to reduce isolation, but also to fundraise and invite people to see some of what they've done with their fundraising over the past. And the big lunch is a great way to have to enable the rest of your community to see what your organisation does, because sometimes you just take it for granted that your community group is well known, that people know what you're doing, but they might feel a little bit like they can't get involved in it because they've not been part of it before. And so having an open day as a big lunch and inviting the whole community in means that it motivates people and enables them to feel like they could come out and join up afterwards. And it's also a great way to highlight some of the things that you've done through the year. And also, if you've had funding from an organisation, it's also great to be able to put up and show people what you've used that funding for and what difference it's made. But yes, when you're using the big lunch as an activity and providing food, you might want to do donations on a sliding scale, because not everybody can provide the same amount, and yet others are very willing to give quite a bit. So it depends. You need to decide for yourselves, but sometimes just saying donations means you get a lot more money than putting a price on it. It's up to yourself, really. There are some huge big lunches that have happened over the years. I mean, this is the 11th year for the big lunch, started in 2009. People use it to bring together different groups and communities, such as schools and nurseries and churches, and people fundraise in lots of different and inclusive ways. This one raised 6k, and as I said, like it's all over the UK, and people sometimes use it in different ways and very similar ways. So that was Preston. I'm getting carried away now. And this is Temple Patrick in County Antrim, and they used these grounds every year. It was private grounds open to the public in the area, and bringing people from different areas together to share and connect. And some of the people who would have caught up with each other here wouldn't have seen each other from one end of the year to the next. So it's a lovely bringing back together. And if you're building up to a bigger event, you know, for years to come, bear in mind as well that it becomes a feature in your neighbourhood calendar, and people actually come home from other places just to be part of it, which is really lovely. So yeah, it's not just about the money, it's also about kind of the memories. If you want to do something larger like that, you might want to get your local council involved or other local groups and organisations, you know, maybe selling them a space at your event so that they can market their own projects and things like that. And also perhaps get in touch with your local supermarkets, because often they match fun things, or they might be able to donate things like tea and coffee that you could sell at the event. And they might also be able to offer you volunteers. Another thing that we recommend is that you could have a theme and prizes for people who dress up and things like that. And this is Margaret Cunningham in Gary's Big Lunch, and she themes it every year. And last year they actually had a teddy bears picnic because they were having it in their gardens under isolation. But this was one that they had previously, and they've had no waste-free big lunch and all sorts of things. And it has grown over the years, like a lot of yours will have, to include organisations and people who want to be involved. Using online platforms is probably one of the things that has become much more popular in the last year. But even when we go back to being face-to-face, you know, on a more regular basis, they're a very good way to advertise and generate income in advance. And you'll find that there are people who are from your community that maybe can't get there on the day, that are very willing to donate to a local cause. So that's a really good way to reach out beyond where you live. And for instance, our local hurling club fundraised online, and it brought in people who were living all over the world because they wanted to be part of it. So think about having something unique that they can be included in, that they can maybe through their social media. And with that one, it was that we caught a ball and we threw it on to the next person, and then they caught it and threw it on. But it could be anything at all that you choose that's perhaps relevant to what your group's about. And yeah, people are not particularly cash flush, so in an online scenario, they can contribute in a way that they feel comfortable with. You will see sometimes that there are lots of different online platforms, and hopefully we can have a chat about that later on. But depending on what it is, you might want to have little gifts for people who are providing or offering a little bit more money, and that can incentivize and make you feel more comfortable about your ask as well. So that was a quick fire run through lots of different ideas. And we do have some top tips on our website with some of your FAQs already answered. And we do have some COVID regulation advice and things like that for this year. but I'll send those all out for you to read afterwards. And I think just now I'll take a deep breath and a wee drink of coffee and ask you guys for some of your questions. Thank you. Now, am I back? I'm not very good at this presenting online. I'm much happier in the real world, as I call it. So folks, if you want to unmute, and maybe we have some questions, Laurie, do we?
I think everyone was really attentively listening to you, so we don't have any questions in the chat at the moment, but to be honest, feel free to unmute yourselves if you've got any, or if anyone's got any other ideas about things they've done. One of the things I thought of while you were talking, Grania, when you were talking about auctions, I was thinking about the like spare time auctions that people do. That's kind of like you can donate your time to do someone's ironing and have that kind of gift, because I hate ironing. I don't know where my iron has been for last year. So that's the kind of stuff that when we go back into the real world would be quite useful.
What is an iron? Who has time for that? Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And it's really good because there are lots of people with different skill, trades and abilities. And, you know, it might even be that someone offers to do your taxes for the year, which, you know, for a lot of people that would be a gift as well if they're self-employed. So look, there's lots of different ways you can do it, and I'm sure a lot of those were kind of tried and tested for you already. But I'd be really keen just to maybe go around the room and ask folk, you know, kind of why you came to the session, and if you have anything in response to what we shared there, like another idea or a question, and maybe that will then spur the conversation. We're a small group, so I'll be keen not to break out into breakout rooms unless you guys are really keen for it. But I feel like the space is nice enough that we can be a bit more friendly. Feel free to put your cameras on if you want to, but bear in mind we are still recording. Kat, I can see your lovely face there. What do you think? Because you're a well-seasoned fundraiser, aren't you?
Yes, we started 10 years ago with a big lunch, so it's it just sort of runs itself now. And people ask, when are we having our thing in the park? You know, or when is that happening? We've not had that for ages, so yeah, it seems to really work. This year especially though, because we haven't had any funds come in at all over the last year as a community, we are hoping to fundraise. And what we had thought about was arranging an afternoon tea. So if you want to come to the big lunch, then buy your afternoon tea and it'll be there for you. I'm just wondering if anybody's done that and what their ideas are and if they've got any tips.
Has anyone else done an afternoon tea before?
I think you've come up with a new idea there, Kat.
yeah, it's definitely a new one for us.
I know that there was an afternoon tea done last year in Northern Ireland, delivered to the doorstep for older people, but it wasn't a fundraiser. It was kind of like a volunteer thing too. They delivered the afternoon tea to volunteers and then to the older community, and then had like music online and a way of connecting. But it absolutely would be a fundraiser as well. And I think, well, who doesn't love a wee bit of jam and a bit of cream?
Yeah, we've got some incredible bakers. I'm not one of them, but some really keen. I'm like, yep, I'm happy. I'll do sandwiches and, you know, all the savoury things. I can do the quiche and what have you, but don't ask me to do any baking. No one would want it, I think.
I think so.
We did. Like we had an afternoon tea in the garden. We had a garden tea party last year, so everybody just took their stuff outside and we delivered cakes to everyone and gave them time to be outside, and then our DJ neighbour took requests and played music and we had the piper out, played Happy Birthday. That was a bit of a last year thing. Anyone who had a birthday in the village during lockdown got piped Happy Birthday at their front door.
I loved seeing when the people were clapping for the NHS and they were showing that on the news from different parts of the UK. I loved seeing the pipers coming out in Scotland. It was so lovely.
Yeah.
And we had them here in Northern Ireland as well, come to some of the hospitals and pipe. But actually, you know, having somebody play music with their music case open as well is a nice way to fundraise, you know, at your big lunch too. So we're getting a few in the chat.
I was just going to jump in on the afternoon tea thing. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert in any way, shape or form, but I was just going to say, not to ruin the fun, but just bear in mind there are certain like legalities and rules around selling food.
Yes.
So I think you have to just keep in mind, maybe check with your local authority, just to check in. But I think it's if it's kind of a donation in return.
We do tend to say suggested donation.
Yeah, that usually, I don't want to get in trouble, but that usually gets you around that problem because it's not you're not selling it, it's a donation. So yeah, that's a good idea.
And Kat, just as well as that, you know, thinking about, you know, waste and things like that, you'll probably want to try and get some of that booked in advance, I would imagine, as well. So get that would be a way to use some of the online platforms if you wanted to as well. And some of them actually match fund as well, so it's worth looking into them depending on the time. Just Giving and different people like that sometimes do have little extra incentives for fundraising online. It's worth everybody knowing about too.
When you say that, what companies are you thinking about for match funding?
So they're all different. They're different, and I'm going to send you all out rather than put myself in the spot and say somebody that's not actually doing it anymore. I'm going to have a little look through and see which ones are kind of more relevant for now, because I think the last year has really made a change on the online platforms. I'm sure some of you have used them, have noticed there's been some of them that have increased their costs because it's become a much more used tool, and others who have taken costs away for set periods of time. So we'll just have a little look and I'll send those out to you all, because I don't want to give the wrong information online.
Right, I'll put myself back on mute and see what everyone else has got to say.
Thanks, Kat. Did you say, Laurie, that there was somebody in the chat just now?
So Laureen, I think I'm pronouncing that right, has just been saying that they're hoping to do, she's multitasking, so she's off camera, but they're hoping to do a picnic theme, whether being in the park or having teddies in the window, to get people to join in. I'm trying to think whether you're able to do that as a fundraiser, Laureen. So if you've got any thoughts on if you are doing that as a fundraiser, it'd be really interesting to know. But I appreciate you're also probably multitasking, so you might be somewhere else at the moment.
There is possibilities. So you can charge teddy bears to come into the park. You know, that could be a way, like a donation from the teddy bear. Another thing you could have is people could enter a teddy bear parade and walk around social distanced with their teddy bear, which we have done in Cushendall actually, and the kids loved it. And prizes for the teddy bears that are dressed up. So, you know, you can get quite inventive with the outfits. And there are some really clever folk out there when it comes to fancy dress ideas. So just like you do for your young people, and, you know, fancy dress, kind of getting themed around topical things and funny things and things like that, you can do that with your teddy bear as well.
I know questions come up quite often about kind of whether people need licenses and insurance and stuff like that. That it really varies, just to say it kind of varies depending on where you are. With there are kind of rules around raffles and lotteries. If they're small scale, they're free, or your local authority might need a license, but it's actually like not an expensive license. But most raffles that are being done sort of for a charity are usually okay, especially if they're small scale, they're usually okay. But if you're in doubt, because we're looking across the UK and everybody's from different places, I would just say, if in doubt, contact either your local authority or your local voluntary council, because they're usually quite good and they'll be getting those questions all the time as well. So that's always one to just think. But you don't want to get stuck in the red tape and get bogged down by the legalities, but it's just worth checking sometimes.
Yeah, and what I would say on raffles too, folks, is don't be afraid to ask people to buy raffle tickets well in advance, because that allows you a much longer window of sales, and you'll find that, as I say, family and friends that are not maybe necessarily going to be there on the day would still love to win a prize. So it helps kind of maximize your opportunity there in terms of sales. And yeah, not everybody is good at selling raffle tickets, so identify the people that are comfortable with it and ask them to do it, because they're going to sell more than somebody who feels awkward. that person who feels awkward is probably going to just buy the book themselves and hand you back that money, whereas you can get double or triple from somebody who just has a flair for it. And you'll find that from just your organising committee, everyone will know someone who's good at it. And the same goes for asking for gifts and prizes. There are people who are just good at that, and it's not something you learn. I think it's just a natural talent.
That's definitely one of those tips where you just have to be just brash and in people's faces. Like I always think, go to local businesses. It's you get a surprising amount of like prizes and gifts from local businesses, because they're always looking to help communities, especially if you tell everyone that they've helped out.
Yeah, and I think the year that it is too, I know we all feel awkward about asking for gifts and things like that, and then perhaps a local business will feel uncomfortable about saying no. But if you kind of go about it in a way that you're saying, look, I know that this is a difficult year, so we don't want you to feel any pressure, but what would be useful? Would it be useful for us to have your branding up? What would you like us to give back in return? Could we, what will it be? Or indeed make sure that you go and buy your bread for your sandwiches where you got your things, because this is something sometimes fundraisers forget, is that the local businesses need something back in return too, because yes, they're making money in the community, but it costs a lot of money to run a small shop in comparison to a larger one. And they do find it quite frustrating sometimes if you go off to the bigger shop where you didn't get your donation and buy all your stuff. So just bear that in mind to shop local too when you can. And that's another thing too, when it comes to fundraising, maybe the business can't afford to gift cash, but they could gift something that's, maybe say Diet Coke that's out of date, going out of date or something like that, or, like waters and little things like that, to make up picnic baskets or picnic bags and things like that. And another thing to think about is the way in which you package things, because there are cheaper ways to package things too. Like we give out stickers, I think, still in our big lunch pack, and you could have a brown paper bag and just put a big lunch sticker on it, and that could be your lunch bag that you're gifting your afternoon tea in, or whatever it might be. So there's different ways, and you can get quite arty with boxes and things like that too. So there's different things that you can do, as I say, to make it a bit easier with the businesses too. So get their name up there. If you're advertising your event, make sure to advertise who gifted to it, and post-event, if you have a Facebook group that you create that you're inviting people to come to the event, don't be afraid to use that group afterwards. Use it to thank the people who supported you, to let everybody know how much money was raised, to let them know what that money is being used to purchase, and to let them know that they're welcome to be part of whatever it is you're doing in the future. And remember that if they're in that group, if you're going to do something else in the future again, you can go back into that group and let them know that something else is happening that they're invited to. So it's a really good way to keep on building on your future fundraising ideas too. Hello, Patrick. How are you? I see you've joined us. Hiya. So yes, Patrick's started up a community garden, so I'm sure you're looking at different ways to fundraise, and some of the things that we have in the presentation might be useful to you. But what we were saying is today is more about the ways you fundraise at a local level and the ways in which you go about it to make it fun for people. And we shared a copper kilometre that might work really well in your area, which you'll see in the presentation, and I think was quite popular from the chat as well. I've just had a quick look through it. But yeah, Kat, just tell us, because you have had some years experience, what have been your favourite things that you've done? Because I know they're not necessarily the things that make the most money, but what have you done that has been fun, that you remember and loved?
The one that you didn't mention, and it is absolutely hilarious, is a human fruit machine.
Oh yes, that's in that same presentation that I had looked at, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that has to be the funniest thing ever. And you just take whatever you've got in the house. So it could be as small as a grape. And you've got 3 people and you pay money for them to go turn around, pick up something from a box behind them and show it. And it's as simple as that.
And if the fruit lines up, then somebody wins.
If the fruit lines up, you win. So you've got different, and it's only like, it can be something as little as 20 pence, or
yeah.
Nothing's ever. We live in quite a a rural area, but rural poverty is very real for us.
Yeah.
So
especially
yeah.
heating.
Pardon?
Heating can be very expensive in the Scottish and Northern Irish rural areas, you know, that
Yes.
because it's so cold.
Yes.
And you do, as I say, have to be mindful about the way in which you charge for things.
Yeah.
Have you done anything like where it's been a family event and you've thought about the charging levels?
We are really careful to make it so per adult. We've also got a lot of single parents and quite large families, so we tend to go an adult price, and then children up to 2 children or maybe 50 pence.
Yeah.
And then any extra are free, so that no one's feeling particularly left out.
Yeah.
So
or kind of having a set family price regardless of how many people are in the family.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, we're pretty careful about that. And that seems to work. Not that we've not been able to do anything like that, but normally if we have a ceilidh or we have a storytelling event or anything like that, it is just it's very minimal, because I think that although we want to fundraise, I think it's more important for us to build community.
Yeah.
And so the fundraising is almost, well, we might as well do that, but we'll just be thankful for whatever we can get.
And it all adds up, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Something that we did last year and the year before, and it was incredible, and it is going to be huge, was we have a little community woodland walk, and we did a Halloween walk. So we just got people to volunteer. We had army guys sort of in camouflage under nets, dressed as zombies, grabbing people's ankles. We had things falling out of the sky at people. We had a crazy mad professor with a drill, and then we had someone else with a chainsaw with no chain in it. But the smell and the noise of that, you can imagine, is terrifying. And that was just such a fun
and that
thing.
Gets bigger every year, doesn't it? It gets more and more inventive.
Yes. So last year, sadly, we did have to call it off at the very last minute, and we'd done it as a PayPal booking in advance with time slots, and we were absolutely COVID safe, but we had a really big storm and some of the trees weren't safe. So we did have to call it off, but we still raised, because we kept saying to people, we're happy to refund. This is, it's not anything that anybody could have prevented. So, we'll happily refund if you just get back in touch. And everybody came back, apart from maybe, I think there was 3, but everyone else said, oh, just keep it for funds. That's fine. Which was incredible.
It is.
And that was another £10 for a group of 4. Because at that time we were only allowed 4 people from one household. So yeah, so easy and so much fun.
Brilliant. I think PayPal's a really good one to think about. Like, I think, and I know a lot of groups have been doing stuff virtually where you send your donation through PayPal, and I think it's one that's really a really useful platform for people. I know, going back a bit to raffles, but a group that I know of, they've been doing raffles virtually and people have been sending them in. And then on their Facebook group, they've been asking for nominations, who's going to pick the raffle this time? And then they turn up on someone's door with a bag and go, you have to pick the raffle, and then they film them. And it's just a bit of fun. And especially if it's, a local character who doesn't know they haven't looked at the Facebook page that group that day, and they go, oh, you're on my door. Oh, I'm picking the raffle, am I? So it's kind of made it quite fun and quite engaging for everyone.
I've just seen there Rachel has put a little thing into the group to say that she's been busy putting together little packages for the young people to entertain them, and that she'll be having her event in the community garden. And I think one of the things as well with that is that that's a great way to be able to educate young people too. So if there's things in the garden that they can touch and smell, like the sensory elements of it, or even including within that pack things to do with gardening, so that young people have, like, they may be colouring in a pansy, but it says what it is, or how you grow it or when it grows. It kind of helps educate in an environmental way too. And then like of course pansies and nasturtiums can be ate. So I have seen at Big Lunch in Belfast where someone sugared the flowers and had them on the top of the fairy cakes, and they were the most beautiful looking things I've ever seen. Of course you're going to want to buy that. So yeah, Rachel says she's making newspaper plant pots and asking for donations to sow the seed of the sunflower, and that's lovely too. And young people then get something that they follow on with afterwards, which is really nice too. Another thing that you can do is, if you work with a charity shop, a lot of the time they might get donations of things that they can't sell anymore, or you can collect in old boots and old shoes and allow young people, particularly teenagers, absolutely love this, to mask up and spray paint the boots and the shoes and pot them up with a plant. So that can be a little bit more, you know, you can ask for a little bit more money for that, but it's a really lovely thing that they can take away. Or you can do it with just paint and seal it with a varnish afterwards. It takes longer. So, you know, they'll come back for that at the end. But just thinking from the gardening theme, you know, that's a really nice thing for people to take away with them. And I did that in lockdown last year. I just bronzed up an old boot, and people are always stopping at my garden and saying, "Where did you get that?" So it's a conversation afterwards about how they can do it too. But yeah, those little things are really good, and you can really reuse a lot of plant pots. So if you're doing a community garden event and you have some plastic plant pots that, you know, really are going to be likely to end up in landfill if you're not reusing them, you can get some paint and bits and pieces and like ask for donations, and that entertains young people. And it's something to bear in mind too, is when parents come out with young people and little kids and things, they really want help in entertaining them, because they, particularly in the last year, have been so one-to-one with them that they just need a wee bit of a break. So having things set up really does help the parents, you know, feel a little bit more liberated and relaxed at the event, and they'll go away from that event really impressed because they've had some fun time with their child, but also an opportunity to relax.
I was just thinking, if you can get some offcuts of wood for free from any companies round about, and get a handy dad to do some bird box making or bird feeder making, but get the children involved in doing it, I think that would be quite a nice fundraiser, but they're learning something practical at the same time.
And if someone doesn't know how to do that as well, like the local men's shed or local conservation groups might be able to do like a little run through with a few people beforehand, and then you have that skill, which would be useful. Definitely.
Can I ask two wee questions? You're on about painting the plant pots. Has anybody ever painted tires? I've been given loads, and I don't plant tires. I don't agree with planting tires when it comes to food, but flowers is okay, and plants, yeah, but you're not eating that. I'm still a big believer in trying not to use stuff that, no, I'm like Granny, I'll reuse everything. I tell people to give me anything, but I have a this debate about using spray in the tires. Some people say it cracks and it comes off, and then other people say, "Oh, maybe gloss paint." Has anybody ever done it?
I think has, Patrick. Have you, Kat?
We have at nurseries. I don't know how they've been done. I'm going to Google it right now.
Another one
Patrick,
was,
we did do it in our youth club. We made, I think I said to you, we made is it Despicable Me, you know, Minions?
Yeah, you sent the pictures to me, and would you believe I was up in Donegal that weekend, and I passed two houses with them out, and I've noticed them 3 or 4 times since. And I know a girl locally here at the hospital road, one of the community centres, doing plant pots, make them like Bill and Ben, no, turn the 2 plant pots upside down. And another question I've got for Larry, you mentioned there about the Facebook, PayPal. Make sure they say friends and family, because my cousin sent me $100 from America the other day, and because mine is business, it's my business, no Hosey Gardening Services. I never changed it. Through the exchange rate and the cost, I lost about $40, so I got about £68 or whatever. And someone tells me if it's friends and family, you'll lose the exchange, but you don't get charged. The other one I got caught out on last year, I done a donate page on Facebook, and they charged me silly money. Like I think for every pound they were taking 30 pence or 30 odd pence. So it
That
stopped the
was one of
donate
the
one.
things we were saying that we need to look into, that we'll send out after this some of the examples of what things cost. So depending on your events, for instance, if you're setting something up and advertising an event right now,
Yeah.
you're charged if you're charging for your event. And sometimes people will weigh those things up and say, well, that's okay, because for instance, with the donate on Facebook, because they're on the platform and it's a very easy mechanic to donate there, sometimes you weigh it up and say, well, that was worth that, because if I had moved the person to another platform, I would have lost them. So there's a decision for you to make for any fundraising of any kind, whether it's online or face-to-face. There's a decision about how much you invest in.
To be honest, Grania, I didn't mind, no, because when I first set it up 2 years ago, it was only a way, and I have over 2,000 followers in my two groups, so it was a good way to get out there instead of going around knocking doors. Or, well, I'm going to do raffle tickets this year because a lot of people have donated stuff for me. You know, brand new stuff. A lot of people are making wood now because the lockdowns, and have birds' nests and have tables and have this and on and raised beds. So instead of me using them all, I'm going to try and raise some funds for my big lunch through it. Were raffle tickets. But as you say, I didn't mind really losing the money, but it was someone said to me, Paddy, I sent you £100 and I see I put it up because I like to declare what I've got and who give me what. And it worked out at about 60, so £170 too. And it was horrible. It said, oh, we lost that money. And I says, well, the only way I can bring it in is to donate. Because the good thing about the Facebook donate, you can go back in any time to record. No, they record it and keep it to say what you've got. But if you don't write it down or keep a ledger, like I didn't do at the start, which I have done now, I had no way of tracing what people was donating to me.
Just going back, actually, it's a really good, valuable point that you've just made there, Patrick. When you're asking for donations from businesses, or from local business people or wherever, or even just family and friends, it's really good when you're getting those donations, particularly if there's a number of you out asking for donations, to just record that, because then that means when you're doing your raffle or when you're doing something at your big lunch, you can thank the person who made the donations as well, and you have that information for afterwards to thank people and to tag in their social media as well. So when you're going around, you can ask them, oh, and do you have any social media handles? And you can then write those down, and it's very easy for you afterwards then to find that or the person who's doing it. Whereas otherwise, sometimes it's really difficult. But that's a really valuable point. Thanks for that. Look, we've had a few people on here who've been quite quiet, and if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but I don't want to have taken up your time and not answered your questions. So please do put something in the chat if you feel awkward about chatting. And I see that Kat has provided an answer to your tire question, Patrick. Marine paint. Outdoor top paint.
I just want to say, Gordon, you see the girl what said about making the newspaper flower pots? I actually got a wee tool online. It's just like a wee stump of wood, and you wrap 2 inches of the newspaper around it, and then the bottom has a wee crease in it, and the crease is snip makes the bottom. It's just like the toilet roll once you just snip it and fold it if you want. But this wee machine was so simple to use, like, and it only cost £5. It's like a wee wooden doily.
Is it a plug planter?
That's it. And it's sort of, you wrap the 2 inch newspaper around it a few times and leave 2 inches hanging down. And the base has got a wee groove in it, and this has got a wee hollow in it. And you just squeeze it together and twist it. And as I say, the schools tell me I'm not allowed to use toilet rolls now. I'm not going into detail why, but to stop people using them on art projects about 5 years ago. But I still use them for myself and plant them because I think it's easier than the children and people, the older people who I deal with. They can't prick out a seedling or move a seedling on without damaging it. So it's easier to do the seedling in that. You don't have to take them, and the newspaper just biodegrades.
Mm-hmm. And I know I can see this, a few people saying, no, they're happy enough, quiet, just listening away. The thing I was going to say, just, because I'm literally off the top of my head thinking of all the things that I've seen, because I've been with the Big Lunch for 10 years. So I have seen a few fundraisers in the day. And I know how awkward it is to start a fundraiser if you're not used to it. But let me tell you, once you do it, it's expected, so don't feel awkward about it. People expect to make small donations and things like that, and if it's something that's going to cost more, just as long as you let people know in advance, then if they're more comfortable with it, But I do encourage you to think about doing things in advance, so that if the weather's not great, or if something happens to do with the pandemic, you're not out of pocket for your group, because people understand, and then that means that you'd have that money for the next time if you want to change the date or things like that. So those some of those ideas we mentioned earlier around planning ahead, maybe doing raffles and selling tickets in advance, or having an online place where people can make a donation towards the event. And then just thinking about the little things you can do for free, because there's nothing worse than paying into an event. I've been a mother, I've had children dragging along behind me, and I know how hard it is if you pay money into something and then they're coming back to you, can I have another 10p, can I have another pound, can I have another fiver? You're like, what? So it's great sometimes to think about having an entrance fee and having the majority of things inside that space free, or letting parents know in advance that there'll be a charge for something additional when they're there, so they can prepare for it, particularly with the way things have been and the way our pockets are right now. That really helps. And if you really want to, you can save up in advance. And yes, I think, Rachel, we can manage to get you a few more stickers. Another thing that we've done before is we have had pebbles and allowed people to paint their pebbles and make a donation for the materials. And you can do that with anything. We've had, just when you were talking about the witches and the Halloween cat, I saw this idea in Cornwall the very first time I went down. They had witches in the windows and a little poem in all the shop windows, and you charged £1 for the sheet, which could be bought at a set couple of shops, and family and children can go round the village with this poetic treasure trail and try and find the witches, and then that witch would give a clue to the next witch, and so on. And because the time of year is June, you could do that with fairies or elves or whatever you want to, gnomes, whatever you want to do, or it could even be food talking to you. But that's really lovely, and it also then encourages people back to those businesses, and they'll possibly pop in because they see something nice in that window. So that's a really lovely way to give back to your community as well. And
this
just
reminds me of sorry, this reminds me of a thing that actually my mum used to do when we were younger with the PTA. She used to arrange treasure hunts, but they were in cars, which is not the most environmentally friendly thing to do now. Always ended in a pub, which was always a winner. But actually, you could do that with a treasure trail, couldn't you? Actually, people donate for the map essentially, and then you do a treasure hunt around your area where it was the answers to the questions were always things like, you make sure you turn the at the, it would say something like a post box, but it would be a coded word to be like for a post box. So you knew that, and it's like at the post box, turn right. So there's really inventive things you could do around your area if you're not able to bring people together, or if people want to do it across a longer time, kind of doing that trail and treasure hunt and just a few simple prizes at the end.
We do that every Easter.
People love it for
just
fun,
so easy. And the mums now just put little so I just leave it to the mums to organise, and they cable tied little bags because they didn't want food on the ground, and they were trying to be very careful about cross-contamination, and just kept nipping out and popping little sweets, little wrapped sweets into the bags for the children, and little, those mini sort of tiny wrapped up Easter eggs and things. And the kids loved it.
I bet.
Just thought of another one there that happened that was great, was just thinking, because I'm seeing Laurie and she has a little dog and she's in love. And I have a dog too who always sits down at my feet here at the minute. I don't know what he's going to do when we go back to the real world. I've not been at home every day. But you can have a pet show too. So you could have your dog and bring it and have a little pet show, or, different things like that. And obviously being kind, that the animal would actually want to be there. But also you can do other things too with animals, like have a very friendly animal that's happy to give hugs. I've seen that where you pay a little donation and get a hug from your dog, from the friendly dog.
Is that not me, Grania? Is that not my job, the friendly animal giving out the hugs?
No, be kind. Everyone has to have self-kindness at the moment. But yeah, there's lots of things like that. And I've seen it where humans have been given hugs too, but I don't know how that will go down with the pandemic just over. So
not allowed. Not allowed. Going, you're on a bit earlier on about fundraising, about the big companies, the likes of the Asdas and the Duns. What we done 2 years ago was I'm part of the committee in the community centre as well, a local And we actually done a bazaar for the first time in 10 years. We hadn't done the bazaar, the spin the wheel tombola thing. And they printed out a headed letter, and I went to 15 of the biggest shops and businesses in the town. As soon as they seen the headed letter, no bother. But the boy who had done it before me a way back years ago said if you just went in and asked, they fob you off a box of biscuits or something. I actually got 2 bicycles, and I got £60 donation from a tire company, and they were all quite big prizes. And I think he's left the committee now, but he said the headed letter seemed to make them think more than you just going in off the street and saying, I'm from Stafford Community Association, can you donate?
I think it's really true that it's important when you're going out for money that you show that the money is going to a genuine cause, and your big lunch information along with your community group or your projects information and who the committee members are and perhaps their email address gives a little bit more confidence for people when they're handing out money at the present time.
There's also a thing that a lot of local, especially if you get larger businesses, they are more than willing to support local causes, but they need some sort of paperwork to prove that so that they can account for the fact that they've given something away. And actually, you're right, just having a letter makes
a couple of them said to me, we need this for head office, and I had 10 or 15 of them printed up with me anyway. But as Garnier says, the more info you give them, the more secure they feel at giving you a bigger. When I say bigger, anything over £10 good to me, but they were giving out, your man gave me a bike at £250 and another boy gave us a wee small bike. So that was our star prize. And he is a local man, runs a cycling shop and tools and stuff. And he always gives. But, the people feel, as you say, Larry, they feel more secure, but they're not just giving it to Paddy up the street to do what he wants with.
I think that's so true, Patrick. I'm going to just finish it off now, though, because I can see people are needing to leave. But it is true. It's very important to show the validation. And I just wanted to say to everybody, particularly for those of you who are doing it for the first time, I can see Katie there saying that she's got loads of ideas now. Do not be afraid to pick up the phone to us. We've done the big lunch a few years in our own communities. There are other people all over the UK who have been in your shoes before, and we are able to help you. So, email or pick up the phone, and don't be afraid to ask. And we really hope, we appreciate you taking part. We appreciate you taking the time for your community, and we really do hope that you have fun with it as well, and just don't be a stranger. I think we've put some stuff in the chat, just if you could do the survey to let us know if it's been useful or fun, and to let us know maybe again if other things that you might want to be part of in the future. We run these sessions kind of through the year. And big lunch is not just a weekend, it's it's kind of like part of a journey, so you're always welcome to come back and be part of it. Thank you. And we really appreciate you taking time to do the big lunch, as I said, and to take time for today's session. And I hope it did answer some of your questions if you had them. But also, yeah, you're always welcome back again for anything else that we're doing, and we share and advertise those things on our Eden Project Communities Facebook page and in our regional ones as well. So if there's something that you don't want to be part of, again, let us know, and we'll hope to put that on for you.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
folks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Talk soon. Bye.